But I have a question for you. How many high tackle free kicks is Ginnivan going to get this game? Hawthorn versus Collingwood in Adelaide. Gather around 5:10 p.m. Sunday evening. Where do we start? Well, how about let's talk just quickly about my upbringing and the perpetual failures that Collingwood came up against when versing Hawthorn. I think 9 out of 10 times we would see Hawthorn beat Collingwood. And I feel like that trend has continued over the years. And only as recent as last season, we got our pants pulled down by Hawthorn a few rounds before the final series that was. So it would be a happy medium for me to see us bury some dirt over the Hawks this weekend.
Excellent.
Last time we met, like I said, was later in the season, and we played at the G on a Saturday afternoon. I think we lost by 30 odd points. The biggest damning point that came out of that game was our poor centre clearance work. I think we were 18-3 in favour of Hawthorn. So they had 18 centre clearances to our 3. And that was the biggest differential for Collingwood since that stat had been collected in 1999. Hawthorn moved the ball very well that day. I think they had 285 uncontested possessions. And it sounds like a lot, but when those possessions translate into scoreboard pressure, you can only assume that those possessions were meaningful, unlike when they played against Melbourne a few weeks ago when they had 50 uncontested marks to start the game. There's a difference and there was a different intention when they were moving the ball. And to further add to those points that Hawthorn were moving the ball well, they had 16 marks inside 50 against Collingwood, and that suggests that they moved the ball well from end to end, were able to get quality looks going inside 50. As far as players who played really well for Hawthorn that day, we had James Sicily, who had 37 disposals and 11 intercept possessions. Connor Nash had 31 and 6 clearances, and Jai Newcomb had 28 and a goal. So we'll look to nullify these players as they all should be available for this game against Collingwood. For Collingwood, Elliott had 3 goals and he's been in form, so hopefully he continues on his performances against Hawthorn and can build on that. Pendles had 23 disposals, 7 tackles, 6 clearances, and Jack Chris had 27 disposals, 6 clearances, and 10 contested possessions. So hopefully he can play himself further into form after a really positive impact coming on as a sub against Brisbane last week. So the question is, how do Collingwood beat Hawthorn? Well, I think first and foremost, we just can't beat ourselves. We have to maintain that level of commitment and energy that was ubiquitous across the 120 minutes that we played against Brisbane at the Gabba. It has to be relentless. It has to be ferocious. It's something we just can't take the foot off the pedal. We've seen what good pressure does to good ball movement teams when you follow this game plan to a T. We saw Richmond versus Sydney. Sydney have been up and about for the first 4 games of their season, whereas Richmond have struggled in bibs and bobs and played well in their own respects from time to time, but definitely not in the same, I guess, echelons of the league right now. And Richmond made Sydney look very poor with the ball. They forced them wide, the corridor wasn't available, and it was all a testament to Richmond's pressure, as far as tackling pressure, of course, and pressure acts, and then their zone couldn't get penetrated. Every time Sydney, particularly in the second half, tried to go in the middle, it was likely going to result in a turnover because of the commitment and accountability and responsibility that the Richmond had pledged to before this game. So for me personally, I'm looking for Collingwood to build on those 81 tackles that they had against Brisbane, which for them was the biggest differential since North Melbourne in 2014. So hopefully we can maintain the pressure acts, maintain the tackles, and everything else will come and become a byproduct of those initial efforts. Over the course of the first 3 games for Hawthorn, they are averaging 100 points conceded per game, and that probably points to their injury woes in CJ, who was TJ's brother, mind you, James Blank, who did his ACL, Denver Granger-Barash has some ongoing issues, and then Ethan Phillips is a player they picked up in SSP who was a great key tool for Williamstown in the VFL. When it comes to expected score per shots against Hawthorn, they're averaging roughly 3.5 points conceded every shot on goal. So in a nutshell, that just suggests that teams against Hawthorn are getting great looks, and that has them 5th in the league for the highest points conceded per shot. So opposition teams are getting great looks when they do enter Hawks' defensive 50. Hawks are also conceding rebound 50s 83% of the time the ball enters their forward line. So when it goes in, it's likely to be rebounded out because Hawthorn are unable to score. So that is an opportunity for players like Nick Dacos and John Noble to absolutely feed on the opportunity that presents, in the sense that the ball is not necessarily going to result in a scoring shot for Hawthorn when it goes in. So we're able to go slingshot back the other way. And that's the Collingwood way, essentially, when we have the ball in our hands. The Hawks are only scoring 65 points per game. 30% of the time they go inside 50, they're achieving a scoring shot, which is second last in the league, so very poor return when it comes to that stat. More importantly, Collingwood have played against great sides with incredible scoring capacity to start the season, and it didn't help that our team was down on form. But just to make matters worse for Hawthorn, Mitchell Lewis won't be playing. I think he's got a hamstring issue. Nick Watson is out for a month with syndesmosis, so they're going to have to rely on the likes of Marbior Chol, Jack Ginnivan, and Dylan Moore. So it's a really good opportunity for Collingwood to find some steadiness in the back when it comes to how many points we've conceded per game this season. And as everybody knows, defense wins premierships. So hopefully we can regain that defensive identity that we had last season. Hey guys, just quickly, if you are enjoying this content, please consider subscribing. I'll be posting everything Collingwood, from previews, reviews, opinions, and everything else in between. I also do have a general AFL channel called I Just Love Footy, as this is I Love Pies Footy, and that is more or less the same, but with a more emphasized focus on analysis, video analysis of teams, where I break down plays and segments from games. So give us a sub if you want, and let's get back to the video. Here's an interesting stat for you to keep an eye on throughout the game. Hawthorn are 6th in the league for ground ball gets, whereas conversely Collingwood are 4th last in the league. And what makes this even more interesting is two of those teams that are above Hawthorn in that caper are St Kilda and GWS, and we lost to both of them. So let's see how that pans out and if it really means anything in the end. Now, I know I sound like a bit of a broken record when I talk about Jordan De Goey, but we just need to keep him continually improving. I was really hoping he would capture All-Australian form this season, early in the season. Not to be, he's been a bit of a slow starter, and his pressure was not present early in the first few games. However, he definitely lifted last week, and you could tell he was wearing his heart on his sleeve. But I think we'll still need to see a little bit more from De Goey if Collingwood are to go anywhere this year. His player rating is down 50%, from 15 points to 7.5, which is very significant. So we need to see that raised much sooner rather than later. The other player that we can't take for granted when we come up against the Hawks this weekend is James Worpel. He's been unbelievable. He was the highest rated player for the last round. He's averaging 30 disposals, nearly 2 goal assists, which speaks to his kicking going inside 50, which is not renowned for. But watching him against Geelong, I'm not sure what's changed. He looks unbelievable. He's a different player. And he's averaging 15 contested possessions, 7 clearances. So our mids will need to nullify Worpel. As I said, we got smashed in the centre clearance department last time we played them. And Worpel played a role in that as well. So we need to make sure that these players don't get off their leads. Otherwise, he may have an impact similar to what Lachie Neale did to Collingwood, particularly in that second quarter and most of the game. Moving on to team selection. Now, I think we largely go in remaining unchanged. However, the only change I can foresee in this game is seeing Steele Sidebottom go in for Will Hoskin-Elliott. I think Steele Sidebottom probably needed the rest, as we've seen his form was down and he was making uncharacteristic mistakes. So he's probably had a week to sort of just reflect and re-energize after those 3 games within 12 days that Collingwood had. Absolutely brutal schedule. And then obviously we played against the likes of GWS, Sydney and St Kilda in those 3 games. So no easy feats to come up against in a short amount of time. So yeah, still Sidebottom in for Will Hoskin-Elliott. I thought Hoskin-Elliott was okay, but he did make some clumsy mistakes and decisions. I guess at the end of the day, I'm asking myself, who do I want in the team more, Hoskin-Elliott or Sidebottom at their best? And I think that's an obvious answer, Sidebottom. I think when he is playing at his best, he is still one of the best wingers in the game. His running capacity, his leading patterns, I love seeing him on the field. And obviously a great leader as well. Does Finlay McRae get reduced back to the sub again, particularly after the impact that Crisp had coming off the bench? It seemed like Crisp had a chip on his shoulder when he came on. He was arguably one of the best players on the field when he came on. He was clean below the knees, he was sticking his tackles, and those were my criticisms for him in the games that preceded leading up to the Brisbane game. So it would be stiff for Finn, but my only advice to Finn is, if that is the case, just needs to be patient. He's so close to solidifying a full-time spot. If not this season, next season he'll be in that starting midfield without a doubt. That's worst case scenario in my opinion. So I think just keep patient. If he's a sub, he's a sub. It is what it is. Just do what you can. Play your role in the team. I think Crisp comes back into the starting 22. You can't take Tom Mitchell out. Sidebottom, if he comes in, he probably won't be a sub coming into the game. So I'm just mindful that we still have players that are actually ahead of Finn when they're playing at their best. I want to talk about some of the VFL impressions from certain players when they played against Brisbane. It was a heartbreaking game the way it ended because Collingwood were a handful of goals down in the fourth quarter and they rallied on to come back and actually took the lead after, I think it was Joey Richards kicked a snap to be up by 3 points. But then from the centre clearance, I believe Brisbane went back the other way. And with 35 minutes played in the fourth quarter, they kicked a really tough goal from the boundary to win the game. So stopped us short of a massive celebration in the comeback, but nothing to be ashamed of as far as the effort was concerned and the resilience for Collingwood to have a crack that far down. So yeah, heartbreaking fashion, but let's talk more to some players who are really impressive. Lachie Sullivan was also a sneaky emergency for Brisbane, so he is much closer than people may have first thought. He's having an outstanding start to his Collingwood career with the pre-season practice matches and the VFL games, considering he's already had 2 30-plus disposal games, so it's only a matter of time before there's a form slump or injury woe where he has a sniff into the team this season. Most of you probably would have heard about a certain Joe Richards, a 24-year-old small forward who kicked 6 goals and had 18 disposals against the Lions. What was even more impressive looking back at the game was he kicked 3 goals on his left foot and 3 goals on his right foot under pressure. He's predominantly right-footed, but he was more than able to kick on both sides of the footy, which is very important and very impressive for a small forward. So with those 6 goals, he kicked 3 last week, and I think he's already beaten his tally from last year. So if there does happen to be some injury concerns or form slumps or management in the small forward department with players like Billy, Bobby, Bo, and Lockie, then maybe he gets a little sniff this year. If he keeps performing like that, how can you say no when you're kicking 6 goals against a team like Brisbane Lions? And 6 goals straight, by the way. He did not miss a shot on target. Harvey Harrison, a player who had a couple games last year from memory, he collected 23 disposals, 1 goal, 8 inside 50s, and 9 tackles. So he's going to look to build on the 4 AFL career games that he's had for Collingwood so far. Guys, let's call a spade a spade. Hawks targeted Nick Dacos heavily last season, and their intent was to obstruct Nick Dacos wherever they could, and that resulted in a subsequent injury, and that pretty much, let's be honest, robbed Nick Dacos of a Brownlow medal. So don't be fooled, guys. Nick Dacos is a very competitive person and wouldn't be where he is if he didn't have this competitive and egotistical sort of side to his game and personality. He would have definitely marked this game on his calendar when the fixtures came out, and he's going to go for 40 disposals, 1 goal, and 10 score involvements off the halfback flank.
Mark my words.
Collingwood fans, I hope we don't boo Jack Ginnivan. He's a young player who won a flag with us. He was on the outer. Collingwood are offering a short-term contract for Ginnivan. Hawthorn, his childhood club that he followed all his life, offered him a 4-year term contract. And the Hawks players are essentially busting his backside on the socials to join the Hawks. So with all those things considering, how can you blame someone to move over to another team that has a starting position? You're not going to have to fight with players like Bobby, Bo, Billy, and Lockie. You've been promised a starting position for 4 years at your childhood club. Let's not boo Jack Ginnivan. Let's show some class and prove to the other clubs that we're not the same fan base that we were 5 years ago. But I have a question for you. How many high tackle free kicks is Ginnivan going to get this game? If you think about it, he got barely any. Probably should have got 3 or 4 against Geelong. It's been a massive focal point in the media. I think it'll just be ironic to see Ginnivan get like 2-3 free kicks for high tackles against Collingwood. I can already see it happening. It's already been written in the book of the game between Hawthorn and Collingwood. What do you think? Is he going to get the free kicks, or is the trend going to continue where the umpires are encouraging Ginnivan not to lift his arm up and everything else in between? What do you reckon? This probably doesn't need to be highlighted, but we know that this is a must-win game for Collingwood. if we win this, we'll go 2-3 going into the bye, and then we come up against the likes of Port Adelaide at the MCG, who are fit and firing and lost in a close game against Melbourne at Adelaide Oval. So they're going to want to have to bounce back after a tough loss. We've got Essendon against the MCG, who beat St Kilda, a team that we couldn't get the job done at the G. And then we've also got Carlton on a Friday night, which is a massive game in the context of Collingwood season. We by that point, we're hoping to be 3-2, 4-2, 5-2, 5-2 at that point. And if we win that game, we go 6-2, and then we have West Coast Eagles at Marvel Stadium. I don't have fond memories of Collingwood versus West Coast Eagles at Marvel Stadium. I think I watched them a couple seasons ago, and we lost that game after West Coast just kicked incredibly straight. I think they kicked 12 goals, 3 for the game or something stupid like that. So a big task ahead this Sunday, but it will really set the tone and help us gain some rhythm going into the rest of the season. That's pretty much it, guys. Let's see Collingwood get the win on Sunday against the Hawks. Go Pies.